Well, here we are, folks, the first day of the international race to the bottom. And what a beautiful sunny day it is. You'll all take your seats, the race is about ready to begin. And they're off. The Canadians are first out the gate, but they're off to a sloppy start with the Colombians hot on their heels. The Americans are still stumbling, trying to make it out the gate. It appears someone has tied their shoes together. Mexico now neck and neck with the Colombians. The Colombians bringing the heat, looking really good out there, long, graceful strides. But what's this? Out of nowhere, here come the Americans. America doing its best to catch up with the Canadians. Look at this. Oh my goodness, I don't think anyone saw this coming. I certainly did not. What will this farm bill mean for Canadians? What will this farm bill mean for the international race to the bottom? We have got ourselves a race, people. We have got ourselves a race.
Of the consideration of Bill C-45.
Do not agree that
An act respecting cannabis.
International race to the bottom to turn the stuff into vitamins. I love it.
There's a new provision that's already passed with the House and the Senate.
Take it all down with combines and blast it into distillate.
If you have a cannabis plant that has up to or lower than 0.3% THC, that's considered industrial hemp, and the amendment would actually decriminalize it. This really opens up the door.
We are here at. We're actually trespassing right now because Hempfest is closed at 6 o'clock, and it is 6:06.
I will help us both out.
I was gonna say it's okay because I've got a lawyer with me.
If I get apprehended, we'll both need lawyers. I mean, like, I'll need a lawyer too.
I think on the bright side, we're probably okay as long as we don't spend, too long here.
No, well, we have their permission. We came in, we indicated that we had all this equipment set up back here, which you did.
And at this point, I believe that we are can be considered one of the vendors. We're like honorary vendors.
Well, we're backstage here at the Hempfest, and everything's just kind of winding down. It was a nice gathering. It was very interesting. There was a lot of vendors here with respect to water pipes and bongs, and something that you haven't seen for a number of years was some glass blowing. There were some glass blowing artists that were doing their thing with the kiln.
That was super cool. They actually have a live glass blowing demonstration. It's a real show of artistry.
Yeah, it's like when you go to music festivals and there's people just painting in the crowd.
Yeah,
you really respect that for some reason.
But there is something about glass blowing that's like outside of, you see people painting when you go to you go to Canada's Wonderland.
Glass blowing.
You go to Canada's Wonderland. You don't see often somebody working like with a little. How do they do it? Do they have like a little mobile kiln or something?
I'm not sure, but I remember as a young boy having gone to Harbourfront a number of times, sort of waterfront in Toronto. There were glass blowers there. I don't know if there still are, but I look back and I almost wonder if there's been any bongs made in there.
Oh, no doubt. There's been more than a few bongs made in there, and it's really mesmerizing to actually watch somebody do that. Like, you can get wrapped up just watching somebody blow glass. It's like that show How It's Made. I love that show.
How It's Made is great. I would love a How It's Made about legalization. Wouldn't really be about a product, but it would be about how this legalization came to be. Same narrators though, and same, this happened and then this happens.
It would have to be narrated by Steve Dale, by Breeder Steve. I had a phone call with the guy a couple days ago.
Breeder Steve.
I follow Breeder Steve on Twitter, and he sounds like, what's that guy's name? The guy from Ghost Rider.
I'm not sure.
He's been in every old Western movie.
Clint Eastwood?
No. I'll remember the guy's. I'll remember who the guy is as soon as I hit the stop button on the record. I'll remember the guy's name. But yeah, Breeder Steve. He's got such a fantastic voice, and he's got all kinds of shit going on in Colombia and fields and fields of high THC cannabis, which I'm hoping to see, come down the pipeline here in Canada is actually allowing the hemp farmers to, removing the restrictions on the amount of THC that's in the crop.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Health Canada has come out with a Section 56 exemption, which allows current industrial hemp farmers to actually harvest the buds, the flowers. They haven't been able to do this up until now. And what this exemption does, you have to apply for it. It would allow you to harvest the buds and send them to a processor, a legal processor, and of cannabis
Under the Cannabis Act.
Under the Cannabis Act, yeah. So that's something that would be available. It's very interesting. I would say that the law with respect to cannabis, it was very well thought out. I don't agree with all the parts of it. I don't think you should face jail for having a gram of cannabis that you know to be illicit cannabis. I don't know why that's an option. I don't know why it's an option that that simple possession. There's going to be a longer max penalty now if you possess even 1 gram of illicit cannabis or cannabis that you know to be illicit. And there's going to be case law on this, how does someone know it's illicit? Well, they bought it from a dealer. Were they willfully blind? And that's something that might come up. So, and then you have other parts I don't agree with. You have, or that at least I think are going to pose a problem.
And as you said, it's not a mistake that these things are in there. These are very well thought out.
These are all well thought out. I mean, I don't agree with some of them.
I think that some of them in these cases are there so that the government can, if they choose to. It's like, we haven't considered all the ways that you guys are going to fuck the system. So we're going to put this provision in there that allows us to, it's kind of a sloppy way to tie up loose ends.
Yeah. I mean,
the same with the driving laws. I think that it's like they don't really expect us to hold much water, but you can't move forward and you can't start regulating a system without tying up that loose end.
Yeah.
Well, we've got it covered so that the naysayers can be placated.
Yeah. And let's be real. I mean, officers are probably not going to start asking individuals that they've stopped lawfully, oh, where do you get this cannabis from? If it's just in like a regular paper bag, So it's possible they'll do that. I have concerns that it's that law making it illegal to possess any cannabis that you know to be illicit, even 1 gram. I have problems with that remaining a criminal offense. I should say though that there is this ticketing option that the federal government has for that offense and other offenses. If you're possessing more than 30, but just under 50, for example, an officer can write a ticket. It's a federal ticket, but if you pay the ticket, it doesn't go on your criminal record. And then you ask, well, what if you don't pay? And that's a problem. So there are certain problems in the legislation, the companion legislation, Bill C-46, which enables regulations to criminalize those who have 2 nanograms of THC per milliliter in their blood after a couple of hours after driving. It's something that's going to affect a lot of medical cannabis patients.
Not only that, but we have this intersectionality of federal law and provincial law, and municipalities are going to be able to come up with, presumably their own types of, restrictions as well. It's going to be very, very difficult for true medical patients to get access to cannabis while avoiding stigmatization. Mm-hmm. It's almost going to be an increase to that level of stigmatization, at least from a regulatory standpoint.
We were talking about industrial hemp before. I think that's going to be something that's it's going to be huge in the United States. So, okay, right now in the United States, marijuana is illegal federally. And marijuana is under Schedule 1. The DEA's put it under Schedule 1. And it's illegal because of the Controlled Substances Act in the U.S. Marijuana is clearly in there. But there's a new provision that's already passed Congress. It's already passed both the House and the Senate. it does something remarkable. This provision, this amendment by Mitch McConnell, who's a Republican from Kentucky, it actually would amend the Controlled Substances Act, the federal drug code, if you will. And it says that marijuana, the definition of marijuana, which it defines as any plants and derivatives and whatnot of cannabis, right. It says, well, basically, if you have a cannabis plant that has up to or lower than 0.3% THC, that's considered industrial hemp. And the amendment would actually decriminalize it. It would say the definition of marijuana, which is what the DEA goes after, they go after marijuana offenses. Industrial hemp is not part of that. What's really interesting is the way that they criminalize marijuana in the U.S. is they criminalize marijuana. They don't refer to all the different cannabinoids. They do refer to tetrahydrocannabinols, I think they say, but they don't mention CBD. So up till now, it's been very interesting in that cannabidiol has not been federally illegal per se in the United States. It's just that marijuana and most of its plant parts that you would get the CBD from have been criminalized. So there's some parts, the stalk and the non-viable seeds and whatnot that you could theoretically, if you somehow figure out how to get CBD from it, it would actually not be illegal in the U.S. But it really depends. What part of the plant was it from? And so you can't.
Right, and I think that this is also to blame for a lot of the misunderstanding in the Canadian market, because in Canada, CBD, of course, is scheduled.
CBD scheduled is specifically right now in the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. If you see CBD pens at convenience stores and
you can see isolate everywhere. You can buy, and who knows exactly what it, the purity of it, but the bottom line is that there's confusion about this in Canada when it's very clear cut that CBD in any form, unless it's purchased through
licensed producer or you grew it yourself lawfully, or a designated grower grew it. So I just think going back to the U.S., this is going to be huge because in the sense that CBD itself wasn't scheduled in the U.S., but the DEA sort of came out in May of this year and said they put out a clarification because they had put out a new drug code. They said marijuana is in Schedule 1 and marijuana extract. Now we're going to add another drug code. And they put out one notice, and they had to sort of put out a clarification that says, look, CBD itself isn't criminalized. If you can get it from the exempt part plants that aren't defined as marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act, then it could be permissible. But they say that the exempt part plants really don't have quantifiable amounts of CBD. But that all changes now because industrial hemp is being removed from the definition of marijuana. And industrial hemp includes cannabis plant and plant parts, and it also includes its derivatives. So there was actually some debate. I don't know if this was in the House or the Senate, but there was a debate. I think a fellow Republican said, we shouldn't have derivatives. We shouldn't let people have derivatives from these. We should keep it just to the plant so that no one's making derivatives of it. But ultimately,
you're saying keep it like raw, like in its raw form?
Yeah, and don't when you define industrial hemp and say this is not part of marijuana, don't include derivatives. So this Republican was arguing, you don't want to exempt the derivatives for whatever reason. Maybe thought that you could have some sort of smokable product. I'm not sure, but this really opens up the door because if CBD is not scheduled, although most of the parts of the plant that you could get it from are, but now that's being removed if the plant is up to or below 0.3% THC. That's huge.
So there's been massive. So the idea is that there's been some ambiguity in the past with regards to this, and now they've come out and they've actually taken a stance and they've said, no, we're going to continue to, crack down on marijuana, but that doesn't mean this stuff. So if you want to develop an industry around that, and do so within these bounds.
And we'll see, because the DEA up till now has, basically, they haven't said do what you want to do. They can't say that, and they wouldn't like to say that. But it just seems like they'll be able. This will open so many doors. The fact that industrial hemp will now be federally legal. In fact, there's a provision that says that nothing in this amendment should do anything to sort of bar interstate commerce.
And that's a green light as far as I'm concerned, because people even without that have been, developing an industry around CBD, around hemp seed oil, saying that there's CBD in things that there isn't even CBD in. So, obviously there's an appetite for it. And, my hope is that the regulators, that this isn't a fluke, kind of one stroke of common sense, and then and then that's where it stops. I'd like to see continued progress.
It's kind of funny. I mean, up till now, there was a 2014 agricultural act amendment that legalized on a federal level state pilot programs with respect to industrial hemp. They have to have a research component to the industrial hemp that's grown. But apparently, what I've heard is that these standards are very different across states. Some states will allow you to actually commercialize, make money off the industrial hemp. Some states allow you to do that plus extract it into CBD. And for some of the states, I've been told the research requirements are very sort of slim, but they have to have something there in order to accommodate the federal plan. And that's something that going forward will be interesting. This new decriminalization federally also says that if you're a state, you have the right to take a primary regulatory control of laws with respect to industrial hemp in your borders, but you do have to submit a plan. So that's something that states will have to do, and we'll see what those plans look like. But it's different than in Canada, where CBD, no matter where you get it from, is criminalized right now, controlled, and under the Cannabis Act is also controlled, because the Cannabis Act sort of basically says if it's a cannabinoid, if it's a phytocannabinoid, it's controlled by the Cannabis Act, regardless of where you got it from.
So this comes back into what Alex and I were talking about earlier with food-based terpenes, and how we're seeing companies that are selling food-based terpenes to mix in with their dabs, or they're even doing it themselves. There's no doubt that some people are applying food-based terpenes to their shatter, and so it'll be interesting to see how they actually put restrictions on people falsely jazzing up their weed with artificial terpenes and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if Health Canada would allow that. I mean, currently you can have cannabis oil. You have to dilute it with a carrier oil. So the closest thing you're going to get is the peppermint-based cannabis oil spray that Hexo has now, Hydropothecary.
And I think Emblem just came out with like a sublingual or something.
Emblem did just come out with one. It looks very similar. So that's it's good to see that there's choice that patients and now consumers will have.
And this is particularly useful for, I don't think much of it when I see something like that, because it's not a product that's relevant to me. But I have a friend with an epileptic son. He's 10 years old, and when he is seizing, it's very difficult to get oil into him. And so she said, if I can just, spray it into his mouth, and it's sublingual, and it, acts very quickly. She goes, this is a blessing to me, whether or not they made this product for me or for the next press release. She goes, I don't care. I'm thrilled that this is available now. And
I think even though the non-medical side is not supposed to be medical. If you go into historicum legalization, if you ask, what's going to help with my pain, they'll probably say, go to your doctor and go through the medical stream. So they can't really, it's not meant for medical concerns, but I think this is going to open up the door so much to those who are going to incorporate it into their life, whether it's wellness, whether it is medical. I think we underestimate how big CBD is going to get. CBD is going to be huge in Canada because it appears all these licensed producers They have at least a few SKUs of products that have low amounts of THC but high amounts of CBD. And that's going to be amazing. It's, how many people have you heard say, "Oh, I tried cannabis once, but it wasn't for me"?
It's a very common reaction.
And for some people, it isn't. I mean, I don't doubt that. But, you almost wonder, well, what if this person had consumed cannabis only after being in a store and receiving education about what might be good for them? So this is going to be
and I think also
amazing.
I agree 100%. It's going to be a huge revolution, and I think that it has potential to spill over into many other areas of innovation and to create jobs and all kinds of ancillary services. I think that we will see educational institutions that are putting together programs. I mean, we're seeing it already with Niagara College. We're seeing companies putting together horticulture programs that specifically teach people how to grow weed because they have lots of money. They don't have people. They got $5 billion sitting in the bank.
Yeah,
you can't find enough people to scale your business as quickly as they're attempting to do over the course of 12 months. So it'll be very interesting to see the innovation and how quickly people will be able to rise within the industry.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be drinking your cannabis milk while eating your cannabis breakfast cereal while drinking drinking
not
cannabis orange juice. So I don't think
not immediately, but do you think that we're going to see that stuff at some point in the future? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? How long will it be before I can just walk in and just get a brick of wheat butter?
Brick of wheat butter. I mean, I think that's I don't know when that would be permissible, but Health Canada is going to have an interesting time figuring out how do we let these companies put the cannabinoids into the food that is going to be sold. There's all these technologies and all this IP that all these companies are grabbing up, and will they be able to use them?
And so much meat on this. I have friends in the prepared foods industry that they're very, very well known company that does TV dinners, and they are chomping at the bit.
Wow.
To get into prepared meals for senior centers.
Interesting.
There's so many unique opportunities and unique niches outside of just the recreational market, and as we said, I think that the CBD, whether that there's as much to the hype about CBD. I think that the reason that CBD partly has earned such a claim is because it absolutely does have benefits, but I think it's because of the loophole in the U.S. That's allowed people to extract, make extracts from the plant in certain states, and has allowed it has kind of bolstered this whole CBD revolution.
Yeah, there really has been a
CBD
and
it also
revolution.
it's been kind of the white knight, in fighting stigma. CBD because it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
My grandpa called me 2 weeks ago and asked me if I would grow him something that wouldn't fuck him up too bad or too good.
Right, and that's we know it's all about the terpenes with respect to terpenes and cannabinoids, and there are cannabinoids that we haven't even looked at. I mean, we've looked at them, but it was very interesting. I was at a conference, MJ BizCon in Toronto, and there was this scientist from Israel, researcher, where they're doing a lot of
fantastic research in Israel.
Israel, the thing is, you can't really make a lot of money as a company in Israel because the cannabis is sold for not that much. I don't know if that's a competition thing or just how it is there, but the fact of the matter, nevertheless, basically, there's been enough interest in research, and this researcher basically had a number of test subjects that were kids with autism and autism spectrum disorder. They tried a pure CBD, and that wasn't, some of the youth showed improvements, a lot didn't, but then they started, giving them other strains. And there was one strain where 100% of the subjects reported improvements.
Actually, one of the first expos I went to was Cannabis, not this year, but last year. One of the first Canadian expos that I went to, and I think that the same
David Mary and
doctor was speaking, or another doctor from Israel, and he was basically describing the research, and there's a lot less red tape over there with regards to conducting the studies that need to be conducted on youth and certain sectors that we don't conduct those studies on here. But essentially they were taking, if they had 100 kids, they would give them all different strains, and then they would look at the terp analysis, and they would say, okay, there's common terpenes in this pool of, we got positive results here and we got, no positive results here. So what's the common terps over here? Yeah. And then they would look through them and they would see what that combination or what that terpene was that was actually getting that desired effect.
Yeah, I mean, so what blew my mind was they couldn't grow this strain. That was I don't want to say 100% efficacious, but the researchers said 100% of subjects showed improvement. That doesn't mean they showed 100% improvement, of course, but anything helps. He was saying that they couldn't grow that strain, or they ran out of it, or something happened. So what did they do? Well, they said, we'll grow this other strain that has similar THC and CBD percentages. And what happened? All these symptoms came back.
Nothing. Yeah, it didn't work because
all these symptoms came back in all these people, and they got all these calls from parents saying, they're hitting themselves on the walls now. They're doing all these things that were being quelled by the other strain, even though it has the same THC.
It just wasn't working because the missing link was not there, or the missing combination, the cocktail was not there.
He showed the analysis exactly like you mentioned, and there was certainly some terpenes or some cannabinoids that weren't prominent in the second strain, but were in the first one, the one that was quite efficacious, including CBCVA, CBGVA. We don't fully know what this stuff does, but when it's the difference between being something that appears efficacious and something that and a strain that doesn't, it's just crazy that even though they seem similar, they might look similar, they might have the same cannabinoid levels, the terpenes are really changing everything. So it's going to be huge. We're going to have there's certain terpenes that promote sleep, so we're going to eventually have products that maybe revolve around terpenes and strains that have a high expression of certain terpenes. It's going to be great. Legalization is going to put information back into the hands of consumers.
It's all about those derps.
All about the terps. Terps up.
Derps up. We should derp up on out of here.
Yeah. I hear there's an after party.
Yeah. We're
backstage at Hempfest now.
Everybody's gone home. We're probably locked in, dude. We're gonna set off all the alarms when we walk out of this bitch. We started walking back in, and the dude was like locking the door, and I was like, no, I'm one of the vendors. I gotta go just to get my bag.
Yeah, this is a lot of gear, but you know what? We're going to pack it up and thank our wonderful hosts at Hempfest, and hopefully have some fun at the after party.
Yeah, thank you very much to Hempfest Toronto for letting us set up back here in the whatever the fuck this is, the change room, the change closet. It's really like glammy.
And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming and sitting down, dude. It's been a real pleasure. I hope we can get you on again sometime.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. Let's roll out of here.
All right.